Like I have a private teacher that I work with several times a week. Since I started doing that, my Spanish has grown exponentially because I started with DIY. I didn't make it that far, YouTube and books and whatever. From there, I went into private classes, and it helped me also because I was embarrassed to speak in the group, even though it was small, even though it was safe. If I didn't remember something that we had already learned, again, I would have this self-judgment of, they're going to think that I'm stupid because I didn't remember. I would have these harsh and critical responses to myself, thinking and expecting it was just a linear process, and I just keep getting better.
What I always tell my students is to trust the process.
Yeah.
Because we have these expectations of, okay, I'm going to be fluent in 1 year, or I'm going to be able to talk about X, Y, and Z.
Now I'm starting to even make some jokes, which is fun.
That's a big sign when you can start making jokes in a second language.
Yeah. I went to a restaurant where they had these shrimp cones. They're kind of like tempura, but they're called konos. And
Oh my God, I already saw it coming.
Yeah. So I thought that I was going to be fancy, throw a little ñ in there, I would like coños de gamba, the shrimp pussy, please. And I was with a friend who speaks fluent Spanish, and she was drinking. And I said that, and she literally spit out like, what did you say? She just started laughing.
Hello guys, I'm super excited because today we are here with Brooke Eston, a fellow American who I met here in Seville. And today we're going to talk about life in Sevilla, what it's like being an American in Spain, and how she learned Spanish.
How she is learning Spanish.
How she's learning Spanish. But first, let me present you all to Brooke. She is a six-figure entrepreneur, a TED speaker, and the host of the Art of Lost and Found podcast. And I have to say, a personal inspiration for me, because she is someone who is balancing, I should say, creativity, entrepreneurship, and living an aligned life in Spain, and in a country that's so far away from our own. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you, Emma. It's so exciting to be here.
Yes, we're going to have a wonderful conversation. So I just want to know a little bit about what brought you to Spain. And the reason why I ask you that is because I remember the first time we met. I asked you, I heard your accent, obviously an American accent, and I asked you, where are you from? And you're like, why are you asking me that? Is it because of how I look, how I sound? And I realized, hold on, why is she saying that? And then you told me, I grew up in Thailand, and your whole story. So how did you get to Spain?
Oh, well, before I get into that, thank you so much for having me here. It's just so exciting for me, and I know what it's like to be in a country that is not your own, to be far from home, to be in an environment with a lot of unfamiliar things, new language, new culture. So I feel really honored and excited to be able to share my story with your audience. So thanks for having me. So how did I get to Spain? As you said, I grew up in Thailand, but I was born in California. So my first experience of life was very much American. Small town, Northern California. Both my American parents had never left the country. They had never been anywhere, not even Canada or Mexico. So when they were in their 40s, for a variety of reasons, they made a decision to take a contract teaching at a middle school in Thailand, an international school, for 2 years. They were going to go for 2 years, make some money, come back to California, and build their dream house on this land that they had bought many years before. Those 2 years turned into 15 for them, 13 for me, and my younger brother is still there.
Wow.
Married to a Thai woman. They just had a Thai baby 3 years ago, a mixed baby.
Love it.
Thai passport, American passport. He's
Awesome.
got the goods. So when I was growing up in Thailand, if anyone's watching this video rather than listening to the audio, I have curly hair, fair skin, big blue-green eyes, a big nose. Nobody would mistake me for being Thai. So I grew up with this feeling of being different. And when I was 14, I had an opportunity to come to Europe for the first time, and we came to Spain.
Oh.
And at 14, I was just coming into myself. I was playing with those boundaries of where my independence began and ended. I was coming into my sexuality and my sensuality. I was interested in art and music and culture. And so when I landed in Spain, I experienced all of that. But the thing that really just kind of hooked my heart was I looked like I could be Spanish. I could read the signs. So I studied a little bit of Spanish in school. So I understood the alphabet. I could read it. The characters are, 99% the same. I was seeing this expression of passion with people making out in the park and flamenco dancing in the plaza and just this joy and excitement and enthusiasm for life. And at 14, I want to live here. Yeah. This is like a fantasy place. I didn't actually move here till I was 30.
Okay.
But I tried almost every year since high school. So it was not an easy thing for me to be able to get it. I came here and I stayed here many times, but I could never stay longer than the 3 months because of the visa. Even though I have this international life and I grew up overseas, I have an American passport. Mm-hmm. So in the eyes of immigration, I'm the same as someone who grew up in Kansas and never left. So there were obstacles there, but I just felt this really strong heart connection to Spain. And so I had that idea planted in my mind and I just kept watering it. Yeah. I just kept, it's going to happen, that you'll find a way. And I lived in other European cities and I got close. And then finally, when I was 30, I was able to find a way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you spent some time in Silicon Valley as well, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah. So I came up in Silicon Valley. I went to university in San Francisco, in Florida, and in the UK.
Okay.
But the vast majority of the time I was in San Francisco. And I was studying a whole variety of things because I got an academic scholarship. I was always good in school. Did not translate so well to my language learning journey, so don't feel bad.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
But I got good grades, and so that gave me a lot of opportunities. And so I got a scholarship to go to San Francisco. And as part of my scholarship, I got priority registration. Mm. So a big thing, at least in American universities, is there oftentimes is more demand for a class than there is supply. Mm-hmm. So you didn't always get the classes you wanted. I had the privilege of always getting the classes I wanted. I could study anything that I wanted, and it was really challenging for me to narrow it down to just one thing. So I changed my major 5 times in 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every year you're like, okay.
Yeah, sometimes a couple times a year, from business and advertising to geography to design. And then eventually I landed on international relations. I did international business, but I ended on international relations. So I really wanted to learn, how does the world work? Mm-hmm. What are the things that cause change or to decisions to be made or conflict? Who are the actors involved in that? And, what's the story of the world and how we interact with each other? Mm-hmm. So for me, international relations was the path for that. But I had a minor in Spanish and I did well in Spanish class. One of the things I'm sure we'll get into, and I know that you talk a lot about this also, is it's one thing to just study it.
Yeah.
And it's another thing to be immersed in it.
Absolutely.
I thought I spoke some Spanish when I came to Sevilla. Right. And it turns out not really, the Spanish I knew wasn't super relevant. Yeah, that's the story of how I came to Spain.
Right. And why Sevilla? Like, why Seville? What about Seville attracted you?
Yeah, it was totally random and totally opportunistic. I had been here once on holiday with my grandmother. Hey, Nana, if you're watching. We came on a tour where we went to Madrid, Barcelona, Toledo, Segovia, Sevilla, and Granada. So it was just, I think, probably 2 weeks. When I graduated university, she took me on this trip. I just thought Spain was Spain. I love Spain. Yeah. I'll be anywhere in Spain, no problem. I don't care. There's no difference for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a very nuanced understanding of the culture or the country. So I was just like, Spain is Spain. And then when I was 30, my best friend at the time wanted to walk El Camino de Santiago, this walk across all of Spain. Mm-hmm. So we walked that. She walked a lot further than I did. My knee gave out a few days in. So I didn't do so much of the physical walking, but I still did the journey with her. So I got to see more of Spain and start to understand a little bit more of the nuances. She met a guy and fell in love and decided that she was going to move to Spain. And she wanted to be close to him, and he was in Huelva, but she didn't want to be on top of him. It didn't want to be like too much too soon. So she said, have you been to Sevilla? It's kind of close, but it's like a little bit further away. But it has all these World Heritage sites. It's where flamenco came from. It's all of these things. And I said, yeah, sure. Spain is Spain. Let's go anywhere. You want to go to like some little pueblo somewhere? I'll go with you. Fast forward 8 years. She's long gone. She lasted like a year. Not even.
And she went back?
Yeah, yeah, she's got her own whole story and her own journey of where life took her. But I decided to stay. I fell in love with a Sevillano.
Yes.
I rooted here. I had been trying so hard to get to Spain and be able to stay. I could. I had a visa. I didn't have anywhere else that I needed to be. I didn't have other obligations. I still had my apartment in San Francisco and my apartment in Amsterdam. So I had to coordinate some things and eventually let those go. But I have fully rooted in Sevilla, in large part because that was just the first place I landed, but also now, all these years later, because this is my partner's home. I'm all in with Sevilla.
Yeah, it's crazy because we have quite a similar story
when
it comes to like our process and journey of falling in love with Spain. I first came when I was 18 and I came on a study abroad program. I was here for like 2 months. And I was in the north as well. So I hit Asturias, Barcelona, Madrid, and Valencia. I was just the same thing, like I'll be anywhere, I'll go anywhere. I don't care, I just want to be in Spain. So all throughout university, I was just like, much like you said, just I had that seed of like, I know where I want to go. I need to go to Spain. I know that. You know, I traveled to Ecuador, did study abroad there, Mexico, but it was always like, okay, but I know where I need to go and I know where my heart is calling. Finally, I got the auxiliary program to come teach English here. And my friend, you know, we've already been to the north. Like I've lived in Madrid. Let's just go to Sevilla. And I was like, fine, sure, let's go. Why not? That's fine with me. So we came to Sevilla together. She stayed here for 2 years. Yes, and I'm on 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And I'm here because I met a Gaditano, a guy from Cadiz. This is not like his home. Like he's very much proud of being from Cadiz, but for his own personal reasons, he's here. And we might move abroad. We don't know. But because this is his home and because there's this tie and connection with the culture, the language, the people, and also the way of life. And that's actually what I want to ask you about. Like, how was your process of adapting to life in Sevilla? Because one thing is when you're here for a month or two and you're like, God, it's beautiful. The people are awesome. The food is delicious. And then when you're here for like 6 months to a year, it's when you really start adapting and you realize like, this is life now. Like, this is not all butterflies and roses. This is life now. So how was your process adapting to life in Seville?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I feel like I'm still adapting in many ways. There were 2 things that caused the biggest barriers for me. One, I'm still very much dealing with, which is we're not in Madrid. We're not in Barcelona. We're in Sevilla. And there's a lot of people here who have no English language skills whatsoever. So it's not like in Barcelona or Madrid, you can always find someone who speaks English. Here, that's not so much the case. So in my experience. So dealing with things like banking or healthcare, bureaucracy really of any kind, it's 100% in Spanish and that's it. There isn't an alternative. So when I first got here, I felt pretty confident with my Spanish until I started to move into those spaces. And I was like, I don't understand anything. What happened? I studied Spanish in school for many years. Like I should be able to at least have basic level of communication. But the accent here is really different. The speed is really different. The slang, the colloquial terms are very different. That was the first thing that made it challenging and feeling like I still am in that process of adjustment. I understand the systems much better now and my Spanish is also significantly better. So I can navigate probably 70 or 80% of that on my own. And then the second thing is something that I don't know if this is specific to Sevilla or to Andalusia, but it's difficult to get into friend groups because a lot of these people have been friends since their childhood. So there is this familiar feeling that I have of like being an outsider, being an other. Yeah, we like you, it's cool, it's fine, but you're not like in the inner circle. And that was really challenging for me. I had made a commitment not to be in an expat bubble. That was
Yes.
huge for me. Because growing up in Thailand, I lived there for, well over a decade. And my Spanish now is significantly better than my Thai ever was. And I grew up there.
Yeah.
But I grew up in this international bubble
Yeah.
where we all spoke English. The only Thai that I needed to learn was getting something done. Taxi Thai, restaurant Thai,
Yeah.
something. It wasn't relational.
Mm-hmm.
So it became really limited. So when I came to Spain, I was like, I will not let that happen again. I want to be as assimilated and embedded in the culture as I can. And that presented surprise challenges
Yes.
because of the social dynamic, and also additional challenges because, as you said in the intro, I run a business and my business is totally in English. So I spend the vast majority of my time, my energy, my day, my communication efforts in English. The process of learning took a lot longer because I wasn't fully embedded in the way that I had originally envisioned. I bet that a lot of your listeners or people watching this can relate to the shame that comes with that.
Yes.
I felt ashamed that I wasn't better at something that I thought would be easier for me. Second, I felt really misunderstood. I felt like people would think that I was stupid because I couldn't communicate with all the nuances. I'm quite articulate and verbose in English. Doing that in Spanish was incredibly, and still is, incredibly challenging for me. So I feel like I can't yet fully be me in Spanish because of that barrier of language that I'm still working on.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a big part of language learning is finding a way to communicate your personality.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's crazy because I have fluent Spanish. Like I'm totally fluent in Spanish. But even then, because it's a different dialect, it's such a different dialect here, there's some things that are never really gonna 100% really make sense to me because it's a different culture. It's a different dialect. Talking about getting into groups here, you're definitely not alone. Like all the people, all the foreigners that I've talked to, and I've talked to many on my podcast as well, so my viewers know, this is a common theme. Yeah. And I've asked my boyfriend about that too, like, why is it so hard to make friends from here? He's told me, like, if you're from here, like, what's the point of going and, like, making friends with American people or like people from the UK? Like, why? We have our friends. Maybe, and this might even be another reason, but maybe because there are so many international groups here and expat groups, maybe that makes the Spanish people even more closed off. I think it really does. And, that's no shame, but like, that's just the reality. It's the strangest thing because there are people here that only speak English and have no interest knowing about the culture.
Yeah. That's a thing that I saw a lot growing up in international communities is you can create your protective bubble that makes you feel safe and makes you feel familiar, and you can treat your environment like you're on vacation.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, we can go to this flamenco show, or, oh, we can have some tapas, or something like that feels vacation-y rather than, oh, I've seen several flamenco shows. I want to understand, like, what is that rhythm? What is that beat? Like, how do I learn about this? Are there classes? What's the difference between all these things? That hunger for deeper understanding instead of just like entertainment or beauty, like you would if you were on vacation.
Right. Switching up the question a little bit, you've told me about things you like, things you love about Seville. Is there anything about life here that you don't like, or like anything that was hard for you to get used to?
Yes. So 3 things immediately come to mind. Right away. The first is everybody smokes cigarettes.
A lot of people.
Most people. Like, you'd be hard pressed to go to a restaurant outside and not have at least 1 to half of the tables actively smoking while you're eating.
Yeah.
So that definitely was really hard for me. Especially coming from America where we don't have a large smoker population. At least not in the places that I've been.
Me either. It's like, I don't know, maybe in my generation, it's like, ew, that's icky.
When I was in San Francisco, when I was working there, when I was going to university, I worked in bars and restaurants. So we would smoke cigarettes outside on our break. But not around food, not around kids. So that definitely was the first thing. And it still bothers me, but not as much as it did before.
At first. Yeah, same. Before I would be that person like,
oh,
so extra.
come on.
But people don't care. They'll look at you and be like,
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah,
doing
they
their
don't
thing.
give a shit. So anyway.
So that was the first thing. The second thing was, as an American and being in Silicon Valley, speed, efficiency, workaholism, like these are valued.
Yeah.
The culture that I developed professionally in. So being here, the siesta, and it still gets me. Here we come with summer where the siesta is like twice as long.
Yeah.
Some places just close for all of July and
Right.
August. But that was challenging for me in part because my schedule,
Mhm.
because I don't wake up early because my clients are in the US. I work the same 8 hours as everyone else, but mine happens like
later
between 1 and 10
Yeah.
or 1 and 9. You know, finish with my first round of calls or whatever. I go out, I walk my dog, I want to shop, I want to get my groceries, I want to do whatever. And I'm in that time period where everything is just closed.
Everything.
So that was definitely and still is definitely challenging for me. For example, I got a sweater fixed. I had ripped it and she does siesta and it's been like a month that I haven't picked it up because it's just the timing. Like
It's
I go there and it's closed for siesta. I'm like, to come back at 5? From 1 to 5, everything is closed.
4 hours.
Like some places it's 2 or 3, but a lot of places it's that 1 to 5. So that's challenging.
Especially in this area because I live in the center.
Yeah.
So in the center, you're always going to find something.
Yeah.
But you live a little bit outside the center. So here it's like town vibes.
Yeah.
People have a different rhythm here for sure.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, like Pedro, sometimes my partner will be like, we're just walking on the street. And in Seattle, people don't walk. People are,
you know,
exactly. And he's like, why are you running? Like, are you in a rush to go home? Like, calm down, just enjoy the walk. I'm like, okay, sorry, you're right.
And then I think the third thing that is quite challenging here, the bureaucracy.
Don't get me started, girl.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
It's a thing. And especially as somebody who's not Spanish, you come in from another country, you have to go through this hazing initiation or something. It's not logical. It's not efficient.
It's all around terrible.
Yeah, the technology, like the government websites don't always function. Like it's very much an exercise in patience and commitment. That's how I framed it instead of
that's good.
The living hell
I
that
like
I used
that.
to think like there's got to be another way. Let me talk to the supervisor. No, there's none of that. It's just you go through the process just like everybody else. One final thing that I've actually learned to really love and appreciate was there is no separation between the generations. So you will see a baby in a bar at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And that be totally normal because there's several other babies and there's kids playing in the playground right in front of the bar that was designed for that purpose. I'm quite sensitive to certain pitches of sound. The sound of small children, of small dogs, that like high-pitched sound, quite disruptive for me. There was no way to avoid it. Before Sevilla, I lived in Amsterdam, which is a much more quiet, Dutch are not like big, loud people in my experience. It's a very quiet, calm city. Before that, I was in San Francisco, which is a very adult city. You don't see a lot of families, certainly not with small kids, in part because of safety, in part because of cost. And then growing up in Bangkok, Bangkok's proper is mostly younger people who are working. And their families are living more in the outskirts or in the villages. So I just wasn't in an environment where there was no separation between kids and adults or adults and the elderly.
Yeah.
So it's something that, like I said, I've really learned to love and appreciate because it's beautiful to have that harmony in society, which sometimes as an American comes up against my cultural context and it can feel abrasive. Now it's something that I really appreciate.
It was shocking for me too to go to a bar and see kids there.
Yeah.
I will say though, there have been times when I went to the club and I saw one time I saw a kid in there and I'm like, okay, you guys are taking it too far. Put your kid to bed.
Inappropriate.
Yeah, we're listening to reggaeton. For the most part, I totally agree with you that it's just about like being together. And also like if you're just there having a beer with your friends and your kids are there playing with your friends' kids, they're so much safer there than if they were like, or at home.
And because it's so communal,
exactly.
Everyone's kind of watching each other's kids.
Exactly.
Like you don't have the same kind of concerns. It's very communal and that indicates a level of safety and comfortability in the city.
Right.
And so I've come to see it for that. instead of seeing it as noise pollution for me, which it was originally. Now
Right.
I'm like, I think this is a sign of a healthy society.
Right, definitely. So switching up the topic a little bit, you told us about how you started studying Spanish in university. You minored in Spanish, which is quite similar to me. I majored in Spanish, and then I came to Spain, and I thought, dude, I got this. I speak Spanish. I majored in Spanish, and then I'm like, oh my God, I don't understand these people.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about your Spanish today? Like, where are you at in your Spanish journey?
Yeah. So I have to say that it did require me to do a lot of work on myself to be able to not be so hard on myself, to not judge myself so much, and for me to remember that I've come a long way, because I'm nowhere near where I was when I first got here. The amount of Spanish that I've learned, and I have fluency in that I don't need to think about what I need to say before I say it. Like, I can just say it.
Right.
But I speak much more simply, like an elementary school student. So I can communicate, I can make myself understood. Now I'm starting to even make some jokes, which is fun.
That's a big sign when you can start making jokes in a second language.
Yeah. And I actually did it in a really intense context because I was in the hospital. I got a mole removed, and they injected something into my face to numb it. And I made a joke about Botox. Is there any Botox in there? I don't want Botox in there, but if there's a little bit in there, I'm not going to be mad. And then the doctor and the two nurses started laughing. I was like, oh,
that's my dream.
Joke. I made a joke in Spanish. Okay, all right. Okay, take it off now. We're going back to the operation. Yeah, now I feel I'm at B2 in terms of the scale, but I'm a low B2 because there's some pieces like the subjunctive, which I still really struggle with.
It's hard.
It's very hard, and it doesn't correlate necessarily to how we say things in English. So it requires me to really change my mindset a lot. That can be challenging. The genders of words, still I struggle with that. I think that's just a repetition over time thing, because there isn't a logic. Like, why is this feminine and this masculine? Like, you just have to know it. And some things go both ways, like el mar or la mar, depending on how you're talking about it. And then there's irregulars, el agua, like all kinds of things that it just requires repetition. So one of the things that makes me feel much better about my learning journey, rather than feeling like, oh, I've been doing this for so long, I'm not progressing nearly as much as I wanted or I expected, for me to just remember how far I've come. Like, constantly remind myself that I'm better than I was yesterday, but I'm not as good as I will be tomorrow. And that frame of mind, because I'm not a beginner anymore. But I also recognize I'm in a stage where it would be easy enough for me to plateau. Right. And just stay with that, I speak Spanish pretty good, instead of really being able to embrace the opportunity that's in front of me and put the work in. Because I discovered it's not really a linear process.
It's not,
And two, it's not the same pace, right? Like going from 0 to A1 or A1 to A2, it's not the same as going from B2 to C1.
That's the hardest one, actually, to jump.
So I'm trying to just be kind with myself and try to not judge myself and remind myself, even though I'm not where I want to be or where I thought that I would be, I'm so much further along than I ever have been.
Yeah.
And I will only get better from here.
Right.
So by remaining in that frame of mind, I can continue to learn and grow.
Right.
And also bringing in resources. Like, I'm not just hanging out at bars talking to people or trying to go to school in Spanish and like muscling through it. I have to be really intentional about where and how I practice. And instead of just like, oh, I don't know how to say it like that, so I'm going to describe it. Instead of saying the word that I might not have the vocab for jeans, I'll say pants. So it's like not exactly what I want to say, but I'm missing the vocabulary. Instead of just staying in that space, I have brought in teachers. Like, I have a private teacher that I work with several times a week. Since I started doing that, my Spanish has grown exponentially because I started with DIY. I didn't make it that far, YouTube and books and whatever. Then I went into group classes, and there was value in the group classes. But for me, I felt like I would benefit more from that personalized touch and then the flexibility in terms of the scheduling. So I went into private classes, and it helped me also because I was embarrassed to speak in the group. Even though it was small, even though it was safe, if I didn't remember something that we had already learned, again, I would have this self-judgment of, they're going to think that I'm stupid because I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
Or, oh, we were supposed to have done that. Oh, I don't remember. Oh God, am I the stupidest one in the room? Am I the weakest link in the group?
Wow.
Like, I would have these harsh and critical responses to myself, thinking and expecting it was just a linear process and I just keep getting better. It's more disconnected than that. Depends on my energy level, how much I slept, like what state of mind I'm in general.
Right.
So there's all of these other variables. Yeah, investing in that private teacher was the best thing I could have done for my Spanish because of the personalization, the flexibility, and the accountability on my journey.
That's really good. I mean, you can only get so far studying alone because you can get to a point where you understand quite well, but then in order to produce, to actually speak with a certain level, you can't do that unless you practice.
Yeah.
Alright guys, I want to take a moment to shout out the sponsor of this video, Lingoda, an online school where you can take small group and private lessons with professional teachers. Just like Brooke, I really recommend practicing with a tutor to become fluent in a language and to become more comfortable speaking that language. And Lingoda makes that really easy. So I feel really lucky to be partnering with Lingoda to offer you all a $25 discount on all of their courses. And I really stand by their method because they don't just spend the whole class focusing on grammar or vocabulary. They actually prioritize maximizing conversation time, which is what I totally stand by and I always try to do with my students. Having as much conversation practice as possible is absolutely crucial to building confidence and fluency in a second language. They also have super flexible packages, so whether you only want to take 4 lessons or 20 per month, you can. If you're ready to learn a new language or to keep improving your confidence in a second language, go try Lingoda using the link in my description and in the pinned comments, and you'll get $25 off all courses. So let's get back into the video. But what I always tell my students is to trust the process.
Yeah.
Because we have these expectations of, okay, I'm going to be fluent in 1 year, or I'm going to be able to talk about X, Y, and Z. Like the loss of identity that comes with language learning.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm not the same person I am in English as I am in Spanish. That's a different version of me, and that's beautiful. So just don't try to force it to be something it's not. Trust the process. As long as you're putting in the work, studying, you have that immersion, you have that contact with the language, let it be a process. It doesn't need to be like, I need to get there tomorrow, or I need to get there in a year. As long as you're putting in the work, enjoy the process also. I think it's really good that you got a tutor that you actually enjoy talking to.
Oh, yeah.
You need to enjoy that conversation time.
And have fun with it. So to be in an environment that is non-judgmental and supportive, you can have that modeled for you. Someone saying, oh yeah, no, this is really hard. A lot of people struggle with this subjunctive. Let's go over it again, right? And being in that environment where you don't feel alone and that you can show up for that process, which is like a kid. Like kids are clumsy and awkward. They're in an intense period of learning. But if you watch a kid over a few years, they grow out of that and they grow into their new abilities, their new skills. And learning language is the same. As adults, we don't often feel so comfortable with that beginner's mindset because we feel foolish.
Exactly. Because we make mistakes, we say dumb things, we say the wrong word. It honestly can be embarrassing. And I think something that I've said often is you need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable and feeling insecure and feeling a little bit silly.
Yeah.
That's part of the process.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, do you have a story of a time where you said something dumb, you said something silly in Spanish? Okay.
So I went to a restaurant where they had these shrimp cones. They're kind of like tempura, but they're called conos. And
Oh my God, I already saw it coming.
Yeah. So I thought that I was going to be fancy, throw a little ñ in there, I would like coños de gamba, the shrimp pussy, please. And I was with a friend who speaks fluent Spanish, and she was drinking. And I said that, and she literally spit out like, what did you say? She just started laughing. And the waiter was like, we don't have those. And I'm like, what? They're right there. They're right there. And he goes, what do you want? And so I doubled down and said it again, stronger, like, what's wrong with this? Are you new here? Like, coños de gamba. And my friend just started, like, she was crying by this point. And she was like, conos, not coños. Do you know what coño means? Oh, I have heard that before. Oh, I do know what that means. Oh, the conos, shrimp conos, please. He was like,
so
okay.
good.
And I didn't live that one down. Like, that stayed. I had a couple of months ago, a friend of mine knows the owner of that restaurant, and we were in the same place at the same time. And my friend goes, I can't wait to make this introduction. Remember that girl who ordered the shrimp pussy at your restaurant? That's her. And I was like,
Hola.
yeah, hola, that was me. I speak better Spanish now, but yeah, that's legend, huh?
That's hilarious. That's a new one.
Yeah.
I have never heard that before.
Yeah.
I love it. So, Brooke, we're coming to the end of our conversation now. If anyone wants to connect with you,
yes,
where can they find you?
Yes. So I have 2 businesses. I do coaching and a program for creative entrepreneurs. And then I also have a design studio where I make brands and websites and all the things you need for a digital business to function. All of that is home-based at brookeeston.com. You also can find me. I'm not as active as Emma, but I'm trying. She's a huge inspiration for me. But you can find me on Instagram at Brooke Eston.
All right. Well, if you have any questions for me or for Brooke, let us know in the comment section down below. We really hope you took some lessons, some life lessons, some language lessons from this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.